Hey guys, what's up? This is Lizzy Jane, and we are back. We are back this time. I have a slew of episodes to throw at you guys for the month of December. Just locked in the next live series at Cyclops Cove in Boca Raton in about 2 weeks. Gonna sit down with some of your favorite artists playing that event. That will be super sick to have on the schedule for the start of the new year with the podcast. I went back to doing a remote episode with one of the most intelligent, forward thinking women on the back end of our industry right now. I was so happy to have Jordan Mafi on. She is curation manager at Beatport for the current time. She's been there for about 2.5 years. She's almost getting her master's from Berklee School of Music. She took on that endeavor over COVID. Like, how freaking insane and impressive. She's worked for Nest HQ. She's a freelance writer. She's hosted Dash Radio and Insomniacs Radio live at some of your favorite festivals like EDC Las Vegas and more. We had just a lovely conversation. If you are an up and coming artist, if you are curious about how playlists are curated at different streaming platforms, specifically focusing on Beatport, this is definitely an episode to listen to, as well as just curiosity for so many of the jobs and different hats she's worn on the back end of the music industry. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. I actually have some awesome additional information from this podcast specifically. Check it out, linked below at www.patreon.com/thisisLizzyJane. Make sure you are keeping up with EXO Radio. We have some awesome guests coming on for the month of December to round out 2021. Without further ado, Jordan Mafi, current Beatport curator of all of the electronic dance music playlists. She has such a wonderful resume. I was so happy to have Jordan on. Without further ado, this is Lizzy Jane, and you're listening to the EXO podcast.
Hi, Jordan. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much, Lizzy. I'm honored to be here. I got so excited when I got your message to join. So thank you so much.
Well, it means a lot that you can take the time out of your busy schedule. I mean, I just kind of what I was telling you before, I'm really trying to have more women who are just killing it on the front end and the back end of the industry come on and talk about their journey and their experiences. And I remember I bumped into you via Beatport like a very long time ago because of some submissions for playlists. And then I was doing stuff on LinkedIn and I came across your profile and I saw Berklee and Dash Radio and Nest HQ and the stuff you're doing with Beatport now and Founder Dance. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, let's reach out and do this, especially because we're kind of coming to an end of year close. A lot of people are, I'm not talking to anyone until 2022. And that's definitely understandable given the year that we've had or past 2 years we've had. And I think everybody's just ready to move forward. But thank you again for coming on. For our listeners, if you don't mind just giving us a brief introduction of yourself really quick, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. So my name is Jordan Mafi. I currently work as a curation manager for Beatport. I manage 7 different genres on the store. I'm the only one in America who's on the curation team. So my whole team is based in Berlin, and I handle the more commercial EDM stuff, the big rooms, the dubsteps, things like that. And then I'm 2 weeks away from receiving my master's degree in music business from Berklee's online program. Yes. So I'm very excited about that. What else can I say? I'm usually trying to host any of my own podcasts or other broadcasts. I've done some hosting work for Insomniac Radio, for Dash Radio, some stuff for Beatport as well. So, and like you said, Lizzy, I'm so excited for 2022. I'm so ready. And I honestly don't know what next year has in store, but hopefully a lot of new exciting projects to come.
I'm sure. Oh my gosh. And I feel like we're all kind of sitting in that boat where we feel like we're kind of sort of back to normal, but not quite there yet. And that's so exciting about your master's. Now, was this something that you were doing pre-COVID? Or was this we're going into this time and period where there are not going to be any live events, so I'm going to go get my master's?
That's exactly what I did. So right when COVID hit, I was very, very thankful that, my job was safe and I was able to work from home. And I found myself with so much free time on my hands. And I've always wanted to get my master's. I got my bachelor's in journalism in 2017. I received that. And I didn't plan on going back to school just because I didn't want to pay for it. But then when I was like, I keep thinking about it and I want to do it. And I saw that Berkeley's program is significantly less expensive when you do it online and you work at your own pace, basically. So I started it right kind of maybe the month after COVID. So it's been about a year and a half now. And I can't believe how fast it's gone by and simultaneously so slow, because I feel like I spent the last 6 months just slaving away on my thesis. And now it's done. So I feel like, looking back on all of it, I'm really, really glad that I decided to do that with my time during COVID. But I understand that for everybody, it's not the easiest thing to put onto yourself during such a stressful and certain kind of time.
Absolutely. I feel like, and I was kind of the same way. And, I would see people make comments around the fact of like, oh, if you're not, coming out of COVID with, from my perspective as a producer, like 40 IDs, what the fuck have you been doing? And da da da. But it's like everybody, it's kind of this different sort of grieving where like everyone's going to grieve differently and everyone's going to handle it differently. And I thankfully haven't discussed COVID in a long time because I've been doing on-site like podcasts at festivals and everything. But it was just really this unpredictable time where no one knew what was going to happen. And in our industry does not function. And the kind of people we are, it kind of puts this fork in the road and says, you cannot pass. And some people that really mess them up mentally. But when I kind of had that mental rut that I'm sure everyone went through, I think when I've had discussions with everybody, they've had that 1 to 2 months where they were like, man, I just couldn't get out of bed. I just couldn't do this. Focusing on something new, kind of what you did with Berkeley and getting your master's, was the thing that allowed me to move forward. And I think a lot of people just realized in any position that you're working in the industry, it's really hard to depend on touring or live music for your financial income moving forward solely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough. And that's, again, like some of the other people that are in my cohort for Berkeley, the reason that they decided to pursue their master's is because they were touring, or they were a lot of Broadway people who now were out of work. So, I mean, I'm very, very grateful that, student loans came through, still not really thinking about how I have to pay those back in 6 months, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But yeah, I mean, I even still to this day, I have those days where I'm like, it's a work from bed kind of day. I'm not getting up.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we also work in an industry where, not a lot of us are like self-employed, like owning an LLC for an artist or whatever, but we are not your typical 9-to-5ers. And we kind of operate on all different ends. Some of us are completely nocturnal. The other ones wake up way early. I remember coming out of COVID, I was like, holy shit, I can't be at a club until 3 a.m. Like my bedtime is at 10 and I'm used to getting up at 7, and then my touring came back and I was like, oh boy, this is going to be quite the adjustment. But everybody kind of has their own flow, and that's what makes it great. And I feel like a lot of corporate America realized that when you kind of give your workers the ability to choose when they're going to work and work from home, it's actually going to potentially be more productive than making them come and sit in like they're in a classroom. And because I had roommates that were all sent home, and granted, it was a lot to be here with 1,000 other people in the rooms, but everyone kind of operated on their own schedule. And they all put up better numbers in their marketing jobs than they were at the office, which is interesting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think even just we all have lives, and I think that in America, especially, the work culture is not very friendly to these lives that we have. I mean, I know people who work 6 days a week and their only day off is Sunday. You cannot possibly get all of your errands and all of the social time and all of your me time on just one day of the week. So I think anybody, especially who maybe has kids or takes care of their family or has any other reason to be at home that's more convenient for them, it makes us feel more free and it makes us happier and less stressed. So it totally makes sense. I'm grateful that, Beatport, we have a hybrid kind of model. So I can come into the office, do some work at home, and it's really, really freeing and liberating, honestly, to decide how I want, my work day to go.
That's amazing. And I definitely feel like more in the creative space and arts and entertainment, they are more open to that kind of structure. And I know it was kind of like a huge wow when Google started bringing in the couches and letting them work from home and bringing in the dogs. And I feel like I've seen companies on this end, whether it's agencies or distribution companies, where they've had offices that have implemented the same kind of procedures all along the way, which has been just wonderful for productivity and just feeling like you're not clocking into this thing that you don't want to be at. And it's like what you were saying before. I mean, I just look at the inflation of like the dollar now and all of this stuff, and it's like everyone's getting paid the same. And so are you just supposed to work more to be able to pay your bills? And it doesn't lead to a very happy life work balance, kind of standhold. And with Beatport, that's amazing to hear that they kind of have embraced that structure. How did you kind of get intertwined with Beatport? I know they're kind of the last stop on your journey thus far, and you seem quite happy there.
I am. I definitely am. I was working at Nest HQ from when I moved to LA from San Diego in 2017. And it was like January 2018, I started working for Nest full time. And then unfortunately, it was mid 2019 when the website shut down. And I was honestly terrified. I had no idea what I was going to do because I had a journalism degree. I'd only ever really had full-time work experience writing about music. And I thought, oh man, there's not that many outlets that are going to pay me to do this job full time. And thankfully, I was just browsing on Indeed, LinkedIn, just all of the job sites. And I came across an opening for a curator at Beatport. And they specifically wanted someone who lived in Los Angeles and who liked EDM, like the commercial EDM stuff. I said, well, that's not me.
Yeah.
So it's funny because I've had people ask me like, oh, who did you know, to get that job? And I didn't know anybody at Beatport. Actually, I just hoped that, my application would stand out. I wrote a cover letter and it did. And I did get the job. So it's been over 2 years now. I love my job. It's actually been like 2.5 years now. My gosh, time flies. And yeah, I listen to like 2,000 tracks every week. That's the bulk of the job. Create the playlists, just keeping up with music and being involved in the community like we have on Twitter, the way that we connect on social media. That's something that's really a huge part of my job. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much being active on social media and just in your community in real life is necessary, to thrive in a job like this and to stay informed of what's coming up, any new trends, the next big artist, things like that. So I'm just so grateful that I came across that job opening. So for people who say that no one can find a job on Indeed or LinkedIn, I am the exception. So I highly encourage people to go look.
Well, and now too, I mean, I know our industry may be a bit different because, I mean, let's be real. It's very rare when you get to live your job or live your passion as your job. There's very few people who get to do that. And that's why whenever I sit down and I'm like, fuck, man, this feels like a job, but I love it. And then you just have to take a step back and say, okay, you're not putting on a uniform. You're not doing this. You're sitting in the comfort of your household and you're making music and you're editing videos and you're doing this and you're doing that. Yeah. And so, it definitely may be harder to find a job within our industry, but it's not impossible. And I feel like I've met so many people along the way that, I don't know if stagnant would be the right word, but they just hadn't broken through in their certain career path. Yeah. And I meet these people who are incredibly unexperienced, but so hungry, and they love music so much. And you just see that in them. And it's like this fire burning. And I feel like if you have that, you're going to find a way to make it work. because I've seen people, I've seen the after party DJs. I've seen the guys who are just promoters selling hard tickets, and then they turn into talent buyers. They turn into purchasers, and it's really, really interesting. And I'm sure you started as a music fan yourself.
Oh yeah. I mean, where do I even begin? I went to my first rave when I was 13 years old.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah. I'm being from San Diego. So in San Diego, there was a period of time where there were all ages events happening from these rave promoters. And so they would do underground events, but for these all ages ones, they would get like a legal venue. It would be from like 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. My dad would drop me off and pick me up each time. Shout out to my dad for doing that.
Big shout out.
Yeah, this was 2010. And I'm like, every time I say I was 13 when I went to my first rave, everyone just assumes like, so you were like doing drugs then? I'm like, no. I was terrified of anything alcohol or drug related whatsoever because I was in like 8th grade. And Electro House was huge. That was, kind of like Blog House was starting to fizzle out. And then Electro House was really big. And then, of course, dubstep, in America, at least, that's when Skrillex was putting out some of his first tracks. So it was a very interesting time to get into music. And I mean, I've always just been a music fan throughout my life. But I mean, my first job, I worked at Hot Topic when I was 14.
Yeah.
Reader, but we would sell, we sold music. We're still a music store, music merchandise. I also volunteered at a local venue to get some community service hours in high school.
I did the same thing.
Did you? Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that was something that I could do because the venue is actually a nonprofit center for teens. So I ended up getting a job there when my volunteer things ended. And so I've actually booked my own shows, sold tickets, worked the merch table. I've done it all. And so I've just heavily been involved in music, going to shows, finding new music. My whole family is just really into music in general. So it was a pretty natural progression to fall in love with music.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just so funny. I used to go to Hot Topic, all the band tees. My mom used to do the same thing with me when I was 13. She would take me to metal shows. She would stand upstairs. She'd let me see the show and all of that stuff. And I remember when I was 18, I was brought to see Borgore, and it was not my cup of tea. And then shortly after that, I saw Sub Focus and I saw R.O. Grime. And I was like, okay, I get this now. And it's such a welcoming community. And it's very cool to see that you've kind of sat in all of these different positions to get yourself to where you are now. And would you say that has helped you obtain the jobs that you are working at now by having that experience under your belt? Or was it just more so like a love for music?
Honestly, I think it's a bit of a combination of both, because I will say there have been some work situations where my input and my passion has actually caused, a project to move forward, or for someone to think of an idea, or to sway somebody about like some new product, or some new idea that, myself or the company or any of my freelance projects have. But I think that there have been plenty of like work experiences I've had, internships, interviews, where talking about my experience with music and just how far back it goes made a difference in, me as a candidate, and probably helped me get certain jobs, because I think that there's a lot of people who can say, yeah, I love EDM. I listen to it in my spare time. And then, when they get down to it and it's like, okay, can you work, live, breathe this music 24/7 and make it your passion to do this job? And there are some people who then kind of realize like, okay, maybe I don't like it that much. Like I'm into it, but it really, really takes someone who is that passionate about it, because man, there are some times where, I'm curating for the new releases that are coming out, and like 80% of them are just unlistenable because they're not mixed well, or like it's way too loud, which is my least favorite thing, especially,
I can't imagine.
or way too quiet or out of key. And so there are just some days where everything I hear, I'm like, nothing is really jumping out at me. So to get through those times where, it's not all just incredible new music, it takes someone who's really hungry and passionate about the job, and not just someone who, is kind of into it.
Well, I think that's kind of like the happy medium that you have to think about, where yes, we are working our job. That is our passion in life, but we're not working 40-hour work weeks. We're pushing 60, we're pushing 80 sometimes, maybe even more on like festival weekends where you're working a festival hosting, Insomniac or Dash or something like that, where it's just nonstop. But so much of it is fun that you don't consider it work. So sometimes, my boyfriend will tell me on the phone, he goes, Liz, this is your job. Sometimes you're not going to have the best time in the world. And I think those moments where I can't imagine sifting through so many songs, I feel like I can't imagine your ears. I feel like my ears when I listen to music now go, ooh, that's placed there. Ooh, that's there. So when you tell me about your process about like the new music Fridays and like the curating for this new music. I know from personal experiences and just understanding a bit of how the back end goes, I'll see artists with larger managers, larger agents who have relationships with these Spotify curators. And, it goes release here, Friday Crate Diggers, this playlist, this playlist, this playlist. Is that how that works at Beatport, or do you approach it differently?
So what's really interesting, it's a great question, by the way. What's really interesting about the way that we do it at Beatport, I like that we're not communicating with artists directly or even artist managers directly. We have a whole department that is like label relations. And so they communicate to the curators who wants to be featured. And we've got a whole huge little spreadsheet where we listen to everything each week. And even then, there's more music than is just being pitched to us as a curator. So I still go in the back end and I listen to every single thing that gets delivered into my genres. So I think it's nice that instead of having, artists and managers pitch the curators directly and having like this huge inbox where it's not only listening to the music, but also arranging the features and keeping that communication, our job is to literally just focus on the music. So I really
That's
like
amazing.
it's set up in a really, really smart way that makes a lot of sense. And, there's a lot less stress on the curators. I cannot imagine, how, let's say like a Spotify playlist editor who is, having this relationship with all of these artists and managers. It sounds really stressful, honestly.
But it's amazing how, you guys are able to strip that. There's probably a better word for it, but I'm going to refer to it as a political relationship, and just focus on the music, because it gives these people a playing ground. And something I've experienced, as well as a lot of up and comers lately, is that, it's amazing because there's so many labels emerging and so many sub labels that are pushing so much forward thinking music that maybe isn't part of the top 7, the Deadbeats, the Wakan, the Disciple, Never Say Die, Dim Mak, they're right underneath that, and they're pushing out incredibly forward thinking music. Is that we on our end, we'll get emails back to say, we love this, but we can't release this until this time next year. We can't release this until quarter 1 of X, Y, and Z. And then as an artist, I was in a personal position where I, for a year, was making music, and I knew I was getting better, and I knew my sound was developing more. And then I knew that music that I didn't have as developed wasn't going to be released for a year. And it's like, okay, that's kind of how the game works. But also, you can do it independently if you have the right resources. So to hear that too, where you're not just dealing with the top 5 agencies and the top management groups, are giving these players that are choosing to go an independent route, a better way to get their music heard by the masses.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, we get tons and tons and tons of independent releases. I mean, even through DistroKid, Repost Network. I usually find so much gold when it comes from these independent aggregators. So for anyone who's listening and wonders if we hear this stuff, yes, we listen to everything that gets delivered to the store.
That's what's going through my head right now. I'm just like, okay, I was listening to this. What would I want to know as an artist? Because I mean, it's still things that go through my head all the time. Like I'm in transition of teams, and when you're in a place where you're worrying about X, Y, and Z, and you want to just make sure that at least people are listening to your music, with the bigger streaming platforms, that isn't always the case. And, that's just a pill you have to swallow. And you would hope with, time and consistency that changes. But from a producer's standpoint, we all go to Beatport. It's like, if you want to get the high quality WAV files, if you want to get X, Y, and Z, Beatport is the place to go. And it's really cool to see. I feel like for the first time, I've talked to a multitude of consumers that are just ravers that really dig Beatport, because you kind of seen this decline of SoundCloud, oversaturation. The Spotify, obviously is one of the biggest streaming platforms, but it's really easy to do, the fake plays, the pay to play for curators and playlists and stuff. And I just talk to people and they're like, yeah, like we go to Beatport because it's just there, and the charts are good and everything's well organized. So it's cool to see from that other side that it's, just a good team kind of relationship and everybody plays their part. Because, I couldn't imagine trying to make everybody happy and still put together a good music playlist.
Absolutely. I mean, and thank you for saying that. That means a lot. I think too, when you say not only, the fans going to Beatport, like the artists, the fans, I know that a lot of people, even if they're not buying music on Beatport, they like to know what, the charts are looking like the top 100 for their favorite genres. But I think when COVID hit and we had that moment, like, okay, what are we going to do? Like every business just had to decide what they're going to do to keep things moving forward. And that's when Beatport launched the Reconnect live streams. And so we had, it was last year over the summer, Pete Tong, Tiesto, like all the biggest DJs who came together. And the best thing was like that first Reconnect, it was all completely live. Which everybody kind of learned how hard it is.
That's a shit show.
Yeah. So I think moving forward, we're like, okay, pre-records just make way more sense. But that was something that we did to kind of literally reconnect with the community and make everybody feel together again, even when we couldn't be. And I think that was a really big step forward for us, just for the culture in general, because, I know that people have their opinions about Beatport, about Spotify, about tons of different music platforms. And I think it was just a really cool way to be involved in our community and bring up some artists to play our streams. We had small artists, big artists, we had Beatport employees playing streams. So it was really, really great. And I think that, it's just exciting to be a part of this team when we're, the closest with the rave community than we've ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, in no way, shape, or form was COVID anything good for any of us, but it really restructured the way a lot of companies, exactly what you just said, were thinking. And I think it pulled out this everyone was so set in their ways. It was like, okay, here's festival season, here's album release season, here are the people who are going to do well this year, and here's the train moving. And when everything stopped, not only did it show everyone that by a click of your fingers can your life freaking change, especially in this industry, it got the wheels turning of these incredibly innovative, creative people who work in our industry who really were just fulfilling these roles that they were really good at. And now they had their higher ups or people on their team saying, what are your ideas? What can you do to do this? And I think streaming and Twitch and YouTube Lives and Facebook Lives were a huge part of this new element that still are relevant. Even, I want to say we've been confidently out for a good 6 months with events and ish. I'm from Florida, so you're from California. Yeah, absolutely. But it's cool to see artists still doing them. And I still see big companies doing the stream events. And I think that's really cool because I would always have conversations with students I would teach or consults, and the biggest kind of thing on their mind would be playing shows. How can I get picked up on this tour? How can I do this? How can I do that? And my biggest message to them would be, when you play for a room of however many people, you're going to have a retention rate of maybe 30 to 50, 60%, if that. And then if they leave and you don't have anything for them to hold on to music wise, you're not going to stay in their mind because everybody's the star of their own story. They're going along and you may have an amazing performance, but if you have nothing for them to tangibly listen to and grasp and revisit, then these shows are just something to put on your resume or something to put off the block. And I felt like that barrier was broken with streams, because then all of a sudden, from the comfort of my home in my pajamas, I can watch Tiesto playing, and I can watch this artist that I really have been looking at, but would I pay $20 to go see them? Probably not yet. But now I get to watch them for free. So it was really interesting to see everything fold that way.
Totally. I agree. I think especially like those first few months that we were in lockdown over here in LA, it was just my roommate and I sitting on the couch, making some drinks and watching the live streams. We would have like a whole like schedule because everybody was just going at all hours of the night. I definitely found out about new artists because of live streams. So you're totally right. And I think especially, when people say like, oh, it's only $20 to go see a great show. And people also have to remember that during COVID, a lot of people lost their work, didn't have even the funds to pay if, $20 to watch a live stream if they charged that. And so it was totally the right thing for the scene to do at the time. And I know that some people complain still about if people are still doing live streams and how, we should move past that. But consider that it is globally accessible. And that's huge. That's an artist.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the base ways that you can grow yourself. I mean, I look at my friend Gianna. She's from LA. JVNA. Yeah. And she, propelled her whole career on Twitch streaming and YouTube streaming. And people don't realize that it's such like a cut off little aspect that we don't think about, because these festivals are these massive gatherings and showing shows and touring and releases. And it's a lot to put on someone's plate to do all of that and then stream and do all of that and still create a channel. Like, it's like, can I have more hours in the day? But I feel like if you can slowly build that, you really have access to this crowd that, aren't even American citizens, aren't even over here in this vicinity. And also what you said about, money right now, people just, regardless of what class you're in, it's still hard. And people are still having a very hard time. I know in Florida, our whole eviction, non-eviction thing is going away at the beginning of the year. So there's all these people who haven't had the money to pay their bills, haven't done this. And unfortunately, the last thing on their mind is going to a rave, Exactly. It's going to take us a while to climb out of it, and everything will be okay. But it's from the touring side too. And I know you said that you will help out with events here and there, and you've done, what event did you just do where you hosted for Insomniacs?
My goodness. I think the last time I hosted an Insomniac event was in 2019. I did both EDC and I did Hard Summer. And then, in the past year, I've hosted some stuff for Beatport, not only just for the live streams, but we do this thing called Beatport Backstage. So we go to like Cross Festival in San Diego and interview some artists and some fans. But yes, the hosting thing, even that story is hilarious. When people ask me, like, how did you get that gig?
Yeah, I would love to know.
I was going to form Arco Santi. It's a festival in Arizona that's curated by 100 Waters. Skrillex played every year. So our whole Nest HQ crew would go to that event. And it was a week before EDC, like the weekend before. And in 2018, I decided to do both, which I was So it was 2 years in a row that I actually decided to do both. And on my drive back from Arizona, I got a call from my coworker. She said, hey, there's this awesome opportunity that I was asked to do, but I'm not going to EDC. But I let them know that you're going to EDC and you're a great interviewer and you'd be happy to do it. Do you want to get on a call with this guy? And this guy, his name's Isaac, who's working for Dash Radio. And the moment we get on the phone, he's like, yeah, we just need someone to do artist interviews and this and that. I thought it was going to be like pretty chill. And it was funny. He's like, yeah, no, I can hear your voice. You'll be good. You've got a clear speaking voice. I said, great. Like, I've never done anything like this. Like, I've always wanted to, but I had never actually hosted anything, or broadcast anything besides, in my college radio station years before. Mm-hmm. So, I show up to EDC. We've got this whole setup, in the artist lounge, and it was a way bigger thing than I thought it was going to be. And I totally wasn't prepared, but I just kept seeing artists that I was friends with and grabbing them and having them come do interviews. And very quickly I learned like, whoa, I actually kind of have a knack for doing these off the cuff. Like, I don't really need to prepare questions. I'll kind of just ask an artist like, hey, what do you want to talk about? Cool. My brain just locks it in. And the people running the show were very impressed with how I did. And so I did Hard Summer as well. But I quite literally only got that gig just because this girl I worked with just suggested I do it.
Life works in weird ways.
Right. And so that's another thing is like, well, oh, who did you know there? I'm like, nobody. I didn't know anybody. And then it's brought me here. And I'm so happy that I have, that experience under my belt. I have more goals, in the future to do things like that, once I get my master's and I have more free time. But so that's how that happened. And it's, I think I interviewed like 50 artists at EDC. And then during Hard Summer, I sat down and did an interview with Pasquale himself. So it was totally unforgettable.
That's amazing. Yeah. Way to say goodbye to your voice. That's after a weekend like that. And then, you're kind of trying to project and all of that stuff on top of it. It's definitely a lot, but that's amazing. And it's definitely commendable because like you wouldn't have gotten the like more opportunities afterwards if you didn't kind of hit it on the head when you had the opportunity. But that's why I kind of just say that it's always just good to be prepared in some way, shape, or form. With this kind of little niche, it is very much so, okay, can you speak well? Okay, can you think off the top of your head? There's not a lot of ways to necessarily train for that. But when I talk to other producers or students or just fellow colleagues and we talk about music, it's just so important to always have something there and have something to say, okay, this is what I'm working on right now. It's not done, but da-da-da-da-da. Because the best opportunities that I think have been thrown my way is kind of exactly like how you did, where it was a friend or it was somebody's team member and they said, well, my artist isn't available, but Lizzy's here. And so can we hook you up with Lizzy's team and we'll get it sorted out. And if you're prepared in the moment, it can just open like awesome doors. And I think that's also like the beauty of our industry as well, because if you look at like corporate America, even if you're on like a salary, you're going to work 5 years, your salary is going to go up. You make it a promotion, X, Y, and Z. Where here, you look back even a year, even through COVID, and I feel like your life, my life probably are drastically different now than it was a year ago. And I think that's really cool about working in this industry.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, funny that you say the thing about your voice being gone. After doing a weekend like that, I didn't even host anything this weekend, but I went to Project Z and was just screaming like a maniac to all of my friends' sets and talking to friends. Like now my voice needs to take so much time to recuperate, even just talking, because, when we were on lockdown, I might be like talking on Zoom with my friends, but nothing like when you're at a show and you're yelling into your friend's ear and you're drinking drinks and you're like, so right now I was so worried that even going on this podcast, I'm like, oh God, I hope my voice doesn't betray me today.
No, it sounds great. But yeah,
I got a little raspy thing going on, but I'm not mad about it.
No. It sounds wonderful. Trust me. I have like, and you just don't think about it too, because especially now, you're just so hyped to see everybody. So you're talking, you're catching up, you're saying all these things. I did the same thing at Lost Lands, and I had never done like a live podcast series at a festival that I was playing. I usually do them at like festivals I'm not playing. And I was playing on the third day of Lost Lands this year. And I had done podcasts on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then I got to my set and I was like, oh my God. Or like Sunday morning, I woke up and I talked to my boyfriend. My boyfriend's like, yo, what the fuck is going on with your voice? He's like, have you been drinking? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, how many podcasts have you done? I'm like, 12. He's like, you need to not talk at all whatsoever. I'm like, yeah, because you just don't realize it. It totally takes a toll. And then putting alcohol on top of that isn't a good mixture. And
well, I was gonna say Lost Lands has so much dirt and dust too. I imagine that your throat is just like coated. I've only been to Lost Lands once, but doing the podcast and all weekend, I did see the video podcast that you did at the festival, and that's so cool. I love that Lost Lands does stuff like that, and like the producer den and everything.
Yeah.
Like, but oh my God, the dirt and the dust in your throat, plus doing a podcast, plus playing your set, plus talking to your friends. Oh my goodness.
And we were meeting so many people too, because like I'd never been to Lost Lands before. And it was just, and I'm sure you've been a part of festivals that have been like this, probably, especially when you were working with like Nest HQ, where it was just such a family vibe. Like with some of like, and I'm not even saying larger, there were probably 60 to 80,000 people there throughout the weekend, which is like insane because they were honoring tickets from 2020. So there were a shit ton of people who came and went throughout the weekend. But, you know, we got there. They made us dinner. Like it was like so sweet. It was not normal. And then they were able to help like accommodate with podcasting stuff and then the producer's den. And there's just so much that goes into that. And, you know, just to hear that like Jeff rents out all of the houses within, I think like a 5-mile radius and like sends them all on vacation. And it's just like pretty crazy. And it's wild to see, you know, his parents, his grandparents, it looked like were there. And it's very, very cool because it really just takes a team of people who believe in something to work really hard to like bring it together. And that's why it's really, you know, I don't know on like your side, if you look at people's journeys and you ever like compare and you're like, okay, well, I have this under my belt or I have this under my belt. You know, I'm looking at my trajectory path and I'm looking at this person's trajectory path. And it's really hard for me to understand why I'm not there. It's like the typical artist from my side, you know, mental battle where, you know, everybody's journey is so different. And I just feel like things can happen, don't get me wrong, but the amount of work you put in and just giving it time and patience and figuring it out is just like the most important thing to focus on. Because if you try and compare yourself to someone else when you don't know their background and you don't know their, you know, the people they know or the previous jobs they've had, it can be incredibly self-destructive mentally.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's something to, you know, a question that I get asked often when I go on podcasts like this is, you know, what career advice do you have? What worked for you? Honestly. And I try, it's so hard. Try not to compare myself to others. I mean, I think we all struggle with that. It's so easy to look at somebody else and think like, wow, I want their success and I want the projects that they're doing. How do I get to that point? My advice for anybody who has asked, you know, how do you actually get, you know, a sustainable career in this industry? It's effort. It's working harder than everyone else around you. You know, I went to college when I was 16 and it wasn't because I was super, super smart. I just went to independent study school and I did my work really fast and I didn't take summers off. I did not consider myself the smartest person in the room. There are still so many days where I'm like, I am the least smart person in the room. And I don't think that, you know, my intelligence or my talent even was something that, you know, people picked up on in the beginning, but it was that I put in the effort and the work because I knew that my effort would never betray me. My effort would only, you know, even if it didn't lead me to certain opportunities, it would teach me more. I would be more knowledgeable. I would be ready to go for any other future opportunity. So it's so true that like, you don't know what everyone else has been through. You don't know the connections they might have. You don't know the education they might have. You don't know how many times they failed. There was a quote that I saw recently that, you know, the master has failed more times than the beginner has even attempted to do whatever it is to do. So it really is about effort and passion. And like you say, you know, with Excision and his team, being able to put all of this together, it's clear that, you know, they're putting all of the money they make right back into this experience for everybody. And I think having that genuine, desire to build something for people that they're going to remember forever totally trumps making money or being popular or selling the most tickets. And so it's clear that's why, Lost Lands and all of those festival brands from Excision are so successful.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think this is definitely not an industry that one decides to get into for financial gain by any way, shape, or form. And I think, while it's important acknowledging that it does take money to live and live a comfortable life, you can't say, oh, I'm just, I'll talk about people or I'll talk to other teams. And it's like right now you're chasing the dream, you're doing this, you're doing it for the music. And it's like finding that middle ground of, okay, I want to devote all my time to this, but how am I going to stay comfortable and how am I not going to have financial stress? Because a financial burden, which I think a lot of us went through in the last 2 years, is one of the scariest things to deal with and the most stressful. Like having financial stress is so wild. And that's why it's really cool to see people on, the back end of the industry as well as artists doing things in the NFT space and doing lessons and having Patreons and finding all of these other ways to make money, to pour back into their project. And yeah, what Excision has done and created is just pretty amazing because he doesn't come from this huge company. Like it's not this huge, it's not Insomniacs. It's him and his team putting on a festival the size of any other fest that's largely driven. And it's just literally amazing. And yeah, before I went into kind of the dance industry, I did a lot of stuff in Foley sound. And whenever I would go to master classes or speak with other people that I was interning for, working for, their biggest thing is that, a hard worker will always take the cake over someone who is naturally talented. And I think there's definitely exceptions when it comes to something like production. There's definitely some, when it comes to singing, when it comes to musical ability, but there's nothing that you can't learn, in this age of internet.
I totally agree. I mean, even it wouldn't be an interview with me if I didn't bring up my favorite band ever. Bring Me the Horizon is my favorite band of all time. Love them to death.
I have a story after you finish talking.
One of my favorite examples of, the fact that you can learn musical skill. And I wouldn't say you can learn musical talent. I think it is just, exercising that muscle, and Oliver Sykes, as we know, was this incredible metal deathcore vocalist. And at one point he couldn't do the vocals anymore because he wasn't doing it the right way. And he didn't know how to sing ever in his life, apparently. And just with more practice, the band coming out of their comfort zone, him singing more, now his voice is amazing. I saw them.
Now look at them. Look at how they've grown.
Yes, I just saw them at Slipknot's festival, and then they also played a secret show a couple days before at Whiskey A Go Go, which is like this tiny venue, in West Hollywood. And he sounded amazing. And I hadn't seen the band in a little while. So I'm like, man, you really can teach yourself how to sing. You can teach yourself how to do these things. And there are so many people, I think, because they maybe aren't, a kid anymore. They think that they might not be able to, no, I don't think I can learn how to play the piano. It's too late. It's going to be, years before I'm good at it or something like that. But like, if you start now, if you didn't do it in a few years, you're still going to be doing what you're doing. But if you did teach yourself, then in a few years, you'll know how to play the piano. So
I think it's just the biggest thing is that you're always going to be your worst enemy. It's really going to come down to you putting up these walls for yourself. And I think everyone has gone through a point where it's like your mind is saying, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you putting up this wall that you're not letting yourself break through? And I think a lot of producers go through that in general. And I mean, when it comes to the vocal thing, your vocal cords are a muscle. So it's just like building a muscle. It's just like me telling my students an hour a day. I don't care if you're making edits. I don't care what you're doing. Get in the DAW, do an hour a day, because it's just a skill set. And it's how, unfortunately, I feel like us living in a capitalistic society trains us is that, okay, you go to school, you go to college, you get your degree, you get married, you have a family, you do X, Y, and Z. And man, it is really hard. I think, especially when you get into your mid 20s to late 20s, you do have habits and you have developed these ways of life that you go through. And yes, it's hard to break them, but man, it takes 6 months. It takes 6 months of you doing something consecutively every day to literally change your life. And that's like not that long. If you think of your lifespan, 6 months to do it is not make or break. Like, yes, it will take sacrifice, but anything, and that's what I say too, is, from your side, do you ever see artists that pop up and you're like, who the fuck are these people? How did they get here? Who do they know?
I mean, I used to. I think that I don't like the mindset of people who, when a new artist comes, they're like, where did they come from? Like, they came out of nowhere. Or my worst thing is when they accuse every new artist that's trending of being an industry plant.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think especially because being at Beatport for the past 2.5 years, I have come across so much music that when I started, there were some artists that were really not on anyone's radar who are now headlining festivals, which is crazy. I think that when I come across a new artist and I'm like, whoa, where did this person come from? I immediately am drawn to see what they've been doing before and assume that, they've just put in work and they caught someone's attention or, got signed to a label just because of one great song that they made. And so I think that, I don't usually sit there and wonder, like, where did they come from? How did this happen?
Yeah.
There's always a story behind it. I mean, I guess I can't say always because we do know that there are ghost producers and there's things like that.
Part of the industry.
The majority of, these new artists who blow up, it's because they have passion and they have drive and they probably opened their DAW for, they opened it for an hour every day for however many months. And then they were opening it for 3 hours a day and then 6 hours a day. And then, it just kind of builds off of that. So I think I always try and consider that there's a lot that we don't know about people's journey.
Absolutely.
Guess it,
Mm-hmm. And I think my thing too is that when you see, I use Peekaboo as a really good example. I just finished doing a run with him and he made music for like 6 years under, I think, like a different name or like a different brand. And then when he rebranded at year 7, year 8, that's when it hit. So people don't understand that. I mean, I use More Kismet as a good example as well. I remember seeing him on SoundCloud when I was just listening to music in high school and I didn't know Omar was 13 at the time, 12 at the time. So I was just under the impression that this person made amazing music. And now you see More Kismet and he's headlining and they're headlining. And it's crazy to see someone like them develop and they put in their time. It doesn't matter how old you are.
Exactly.
Which is kind of the consensus of it all, where a lot of times before you develop someone, it's going to be 5, 6, 7 years. And I think that's the cool thing about this industry too, where you have all these little hidden gems. And through quarantine, through COVID, I feel like everyone was encouraged to push the boundary and just make what they wanted to make because no one was making music for a big club system and no one was putting out that stuff then. So you got all of these side projects and you got all this forward thinking stuff. And now that we're back to normal, people aren't changing their ways. And I really think the consumer is here for this new age of bass music, new age of other stuff and like future rhythm. And I look at all of these new subgenres in like the bass lane and it's so freaking cool. Really quick. Bringing Horizon, I have to tell you before we go. So it was my first Warped Tour ever. And it was after they released their album Diamonds Aren't Forever. And I remember
season, right?
Yes. Yeah. Suicide Season. I remember it was literally my first Wall of Death, my first
Oh my God.
It started pouring down rain and he was just like, go. And it was just so insane. And like to see, I mean, that's that's like the evolution of an artist, like of a band. And that's why you look at people, and I really hate this kind of thing in our industry that I think we're slowly moving out of. Like I use Getter as a good example with his like Visceral project, is that you see like pop stars like Madonna like reinvent themselves, Lady Gaga reinvent themselves. Like Little Texas had a fucking remix for her, you know? So it's like you could have never imagined her doing something like that 5 years ago, but that's just her growth. And I really hope that as we continue on down this road where people are really starting to experiment, that they're not against artists doing different things. But I get it, because it's hard, because, you know, we exist where a lot of these aren't live performances, and it really is this kind of dance music. So it's hard when you know an artist to do 5 years of one sound and then change it up and go another way. And would you say, like, from your experience of seeing maybe artists do that before, that starting a new project may be more beneficial than changing it up and releasing whatever they want to release?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I've seen both, you know, an artist who kind of switches up their style and, you know, an artist who releases a different alias be successful. For example, Lax, you know, dubstep producer and DJ, now has a project called Link that's, you know, hard house, stuff that's like high energy. And he just played Project Z as well. And I even told him in the beginning, like, oh, why don't you just release it under your current alias? And he just had a different vision for this project, and it worked. It worked really well. I think having both projects made a lot of sense. But then again, you know, there are some artists like, let's say, Getter, who I loved Visceral. I really did. And I loved seeing the live show. I got to see a preview of him doing the show too, when he was practicing it. And it really does kind of break my heart to see how some of the community has reacted, because imagine, you know, eating the same meal for the rest of your life. If you're a chef, or imagine cooking the same meal for the rest of your life. If you're a chef, or imagine writing the same story over and over again. If you're a writer, I cannot imagine being an artist and putting out the same music year after year after year. Exactly like Bring Me the Horizon kind of went a little more commercial, but now they're kind of like this generation's Linkin Park, and it worked. And I mean, I've been a fan since the very beginning. I like the heavy stuff and I like the soft stuff from them. I love it all.
Same.
But, you know, not everybody is so open-minded about different styles and genres. I know people have their preferences, but I also think it's very important to respect artists and their decision to make what they want to make. Mm-hmm. However, I guess to go back to what the root of your question was, I think the artist should totally take a gamble and try and kind of release stuff that's out of their normal realm. But if they do have an idea for new branding, or they want to take it in a certain direction, let's sudden death. I mean, Void isn't even technically like a different alias. We all know that Void is sudden death. And when he's billed, it's sudden death presents Void. You know, it's not usually just listed as Void, but it is a little bit of he's explained, you know, the difference between the two artist aliases, and it works and it makes sense. And he didn't have to, you know, start a whole new like social media page, like on Instagram or on SoundCloud or on anything. He kind of, I want to use there's a term I want to use that I can't think of right now, but you know, it's all in-house basically.
Yeah.
And that works.
It's really under that same umbrella. It's like, here's this and here's this.
Yeah. So I think that seems like he's a great example of, you know, making music that's in a little bit of a different style, without actually sacrificing, you know, your artist name and your popularity and your fan base. So Danny, if you're listening, keep it up.
Yeah, right. I know. No, he's absolutely killed it. And I didn't know the difference. Like I knew the aesthetic difference, obviously, but I didn't know like the musical difference behind it. I think until like Lost Lands, and I was like, okay, I get it now. This is really, really cool. And oh, absolutely. I love it. You know, I feel like every case is obviously different, where like those two do fall under like the same kind of base umbrella, which may make it a little bit easier. My thing is that I feel like if you're an up and coming artist and you plan on doing like a multi-genre faceted project, is to kind of like spread it out and just don't, you know, commit to like one thing and then say, okay, I do this. And I use like Nitty Gritty as a good example, where it may take you a lot longer to gain that traction, but you're building on all four corners. You're building from this space, you're building from this space. And, you know, I go and see his sets, and his sets are so much fun, and you never know what you're going to get. Like, yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wookie's like that too. I think he's a very, very talented multi-genre producer. And then let's not forget now Dubloads has House Loads. And I know that he's kind of been posting. Some people are like, why is he playing bass house? I was here to listen to dubstep. When it's House Loads. Come on.
It's literally in the name. Come on, guys. Yeah.
Most people are into it and they're really liking it. And I think, that's a good way that he didn't have to sacrifice his branding or his identity to play a different style of music for an entire tour. So another good example of how you can kind of marry, these different versions of your artistic self into the same brand.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, definitely. So, okay. So you're wrapping up your master's. Yes. And what was your thesis about? I remember doing that. No.
Yes, I'm so excited because I'm done in 2 weeks. It's been a journey for sure. So for Berkeley, we have something that's called a culminating experience. So we don't have to do like a traditional research study, master's thesis type of thing. However, I'm a writer and I love to research and I love data. And so some of my other classmates, they did, business plans, or they did marketing plans or case studies on music companies. And I decided that I would like to do a survey and a full-blown experiment where I had members of the electronic music community listen to 5 different songs of different electronic genres, not knowing, the artist or the title or what genre it is already. It's just 30-second clips. You press play, no other identifying information. And I asked participants what genre they think it is and to explain why, because I wanted to find out how people assign genres to electronic music. I know one criticism of Beatport that I come across often is that we don't know how to categorize music because sometimes, songs will be in different genres, and there's reasons for that go beyond the actual curation, because it has to do with distributors delivering to a certain genre. We don't receive the music and then assign the genre. It comes in as a certain genre already.
Okay. Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. If anybody didn't know that, yes. And so sometimes, a distributor will deliver something and it automatically just goes to dance as like the default genre. So you got to go in and then change it to what it's supposed to be. But anyways, yeah. So I thought, okay, if there are people who believe it should be easier to categorize music and we should be better at it, I'm like, I want to know how everyone else does it. So I sought out to get like 150 responses. The survey was only live for like 48 hours and I got 2,000 responses. And I was like, oh my goodness, I need a lot of data. So, yeah. And, the things that I found in this, most people, I thought that like consumers, people who didn't identify as musicians or industry workers, that they would kind of base genres off of how it made them feel, or, subjective things like the mood of it, or things like the intensity. But I found that most consumers were actually using terminology that producers use. Like they think about the arrangement, about the tempo, about the key signature, about like the time signature, all of that. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that like today's, electronic music fans are totally plugged in. And I don't think that there's many other genres where the fans who don't even make the music, who don't even work in the music, know how to identify these elements in the music. So that was one of the most interesting findings that I had from that, and that different communities within electronic music actually help to define genres themselves. We've got like our little dubstep community on Twitter. There's the techno community. There's a tech house community. And this connection between people and, when different communities cross over and we share music and we talk about music, that's how new genres and subgenres are created. And so it's very valuable to have a community like this, like we have online. And I know that, rock music or country music or rap music, they've all got their own, communities online as well. But I think dance music is just so vast and you can cross over in so many different ways. And that's what I love about it. But yeah, that's what I did my thesis on, just because, I live and breathe this music and I just wanted to know more about how everyone else perceives it.
That's amazing. And I mean, way to approach that in a way, shape, or form that you can apply it to the job that you're working at now, which is amazing. And it is important because I think one thing I've noticed, especially from being so heavily in the metal scene growing up, all of that stuff, and then switching to EDM, is that I've never seen a culture of people that are not musically inclined or have a musical background be so knowledgeable and like informative about the type of music that they're listening to. And I really do feel like this is the culture that we have is a way of life. So I know people who, they live for the shows, they live for the streams, they live for the new music, which is amazing because that's the only way that we're able to have a job and like make the world go around, in the entertainment industry. But it's very special because I think it's one of the only genres where you can really listen to your fans and understand, okay, this was like received well, this wasn't received well. It's not people who are bumping it on the radio on the way home, listening to it once. You have people coming back and listening and coming back and listening. And I think that's what makes it so beautiful. And then that translates into the space of festivals where, I feel like it's one of the only times that you can have 50 to 100,000 people in one area and have nobody get hurt and nobody, be robbed. And especially in this, time of our lives and society, it's very rare to have events like that.
Yeah, I even think going kind of more into the art about it, like being at EDC Las Vegas and, there's 150,000 people and at every corner, it's a different style of music. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a hard dance girl. So there's 1 second I'm, punching the air to 200 BPM hardcore. But if I just walk a couple, little steps over, then I'm dancing to drum and bass, or I walk to the next stage and I'm dancing to big room. And it's so cool to think about how our scene is so unique that way. Yes. And so it kind of reminded me of that. It's like, so many people and such a positive vibe, and you have this like mixed bag. I love this community so much, and I love this music so much. And it's amazing to be able to connect with like-minded people like yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just passionate. And we're here for the music. We're here because we want to be here.
Absolutely. And I think I feel like you've been in this industry a little bit longer than I have. And that's why I'm so stoked to kind of pick your brain. But that's what I keep running into, a bit higher professionally. I keep running into people who really just love what they're doing. And I think that's so cool because you don't necessarily see that in a corporate field. You just don't. And it's like here, like I keep thinking, oh my God, like you're meeting with this big agency or you have this big interview. It's going to be like all like super, uptight and have everything prepared. And everyone's just like, let's just talk about music because we love music. And I think that's so beautiful. And yeah, I mean, it's so wonderful to connect with you. I really want to have this I feel like I always want women and men to be obviously equally looked upon, but there's just so many women right now who are, must die. Literally, he commented when Lee was on the podcast with me, he goes, all my favorite people in this industry are women. That's it. I only want to deal with the women. And it's very true because we're just built differently. We should be built differently, but it's really cool to see a lot of people who are incredibly successful in this industry kind of shining their light and looking upon women to move things forward and make changes. And I think it's a huge growth point that we have a long way to go, but it's definitely becoming acknowledged, and you're seeing more women artists and you're seeing more women on the back end, and it's a good direction to move in.
I agree. And it's tough to earn that respect. I think it was a lot tougher, years ago to earn that respect. I just turned 25. I'm really young. And so when some
I did too. Okay. So never mind. We're both 25. There we go.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And so when some people have been like, oh, so if you're only 25, so you've been working, since you were 21, it's like, no, I was writing articles and stuff when I was 14, 15 and publishing them on music blogs and stuff. And so once again, going back to you don't know someone's journey. You don't know how much. So I guess I booked my first show, 9 years ago when I was a kid. So that's what's cool. But, earning that respect as a woman ever since then, there's been some really tough times, dude. And I'm sure, there's been some really tough times. And I've had, some other women who are kind of aspiring to work in our industry say like, what do you do about, some of these guys who don't respect you, or like just kind of internalized, misogyny when it comes to dealing with women who are working in music. And it took me a while to like actually build this reputation for myself that most of the time people don't fuck with me anymore, but like they for sure did. And it happens from time to time, but because, you put in the work, you show your work, you show the value that you bring to the community, and people will have your back. Just like Must Die, like I said, I'm pretty sure he responded when you tweeted.
Oh, he did. He did.
He loves me too. I love him a lot. But people like him who actively bring up women that they believe in and show the world like, hey, you need to respect these women. They are doing the same job, if not better, than these other guys in the industry. So it definitely takes some time to kind of
it makes a world of difference. And that's my biggest thing is that, most of the students that I teach are women, and they come to this industry with very naive eyes. And I'm someone where I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. And I would love for you to learn from my mistakes and all of my other colleagues' mistakes that are female. But it's just let the work speak for yourself. Put your head down. Don't, you're always going to not make everyone happy. And in fact, the more successful you are, the less happy people are going to be. And that's just the industry that you've chosen to be in. But it's like this across the board. It's not just in music. It's not just in the arts. It's everywhere. It's in corporate America. It's down the street at the gas station, and it's just something that we collectively all have to keep fighting for. And that's why I think having these discussions and shining light on how intelligent and well-spoken and, commendable you are inspires a lot of other women, because it makes them feel like it's possible, because sometimes they just don't think it's possible. It's very intimidating to walk in a room full of men and command attention when no one else in that room is a female. And that's something that I think every female I know in this industry has been put in that place. And the more women there are, the easier it'll be. But everyone will still have that moment where you really don't feel like you belong. And it takes just a lot of time and patience and understanding that, you can't control how people act towards you. You can only control how you react and how you choose to move forward. And you're the only one that's going to bring yourself down. Like when everybody was out to cancel everybody, I'm just like, you're the only person that's going to allow yourself to get canceled. So just remove yourself from the phone and like keep going. And that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that, when I was growing up, I was like super, super annoying to a lot of the people in my life, because I was the young, I was the 16-year-old living in the dorms. Nobody wanted to hang out with me. They all thought I was just some annoying little teenager. And I think every single person I've ever dated has told me I'm too much. But then when I really grew into that, and I'm like, you know what? I am a lot, but I'm just enough. And I can use my big personality and my voice and my words to express myself in a way that doesn't make me feel like I need to make myself smaller. And something I love to say when people, feel like, they want more people to like them, or they want certain people to like them. It is so unrealistic to expect everybody or want everybody to like you, because do you like everybody you meet? No, you don't. And so it's totally unrealistic to expect everyone to like fuck with what you're doing, because sure. And everyone, there's people we just don't vibe with, and projects we don't really like, and we don't need to be negative about it. But that's why it's like, don't let it get to you ever. Just do your thing and be yourself, treat people with respect, work hard. And I don't see how you can fail.
Literally. And that comes just back to, you're going to be the biggest obstacle that you face as like going forward. And that's why it's just the continuous conversations of, this is why we build the house of brick and not straw. And this is why we like move forward with our head down and don't pay attention to other people's journeys, because everyone is different. And you can't, it's like, it's on your side of the industry too, where even though there are more women, there's still not enough for us not to be categorized in one circle, you know? Yeah. So you deal with artists all the time. So, you know, when you see the whole, give me some female DJs, give me this, and you've got a techno DJ, a hardstyle DJ, a dubstep DJ, and you know, some other, you know, lo-fi producer all being tagged in the same post as like the female DJ. It's just something that is still part of our community, and you just have to try and rise above. And, you know, and again, though, too, it's like looking at Girl Gang, looking at what Jeannie kind of curated. Yeah. When I started, and I didn't even start that long ago, there were really the big female artists like Rez and Allison, and Whipped Cream was coming up at the time. And now there's a lot of us, which is amazing.
Yeah, I want to shout out like even the guys who, you know, some of the more popular artists, the male ones who have been announcing their tours and bringing women along on their tours. Like, and I sometimes it really does irk me now when I see new tours being announced, and I'm like, no women on the whole thing. Okay, but there are some amazing artists. Like Must Die is one of them. He's actually playing on Friday, and Water Spirit, who is this really, I'm sure you know them, very sick non-binary producer, lives in Florida, and I've never met them in person before, but like
from Orlando.
Yeah, it's like that's the representation that, you know, women and non-binary and trans producers and DJs need. Like we need the people with the privilege to put on for us. And I thankfully have had that throughout my career as well, where my friends who had a little bit more influence because of their privilege were able to help me like that. So men, keep it up. Keep doing it.
No, it takes them though. And it's fucked to say we're still in that era where like it will take a man to make them do it. But I have seen like the things that Lee said, you know, it makes the world of a difference because a lot of people, especially a lot of up and coming artists, look up to him, and he's like talking about these women and talking about his experience with them. So that's the next generation that you're influencing, which is really, really, really important. And also, yeah, with, you know, I have my female producer chats, and it's important for us. You know, we have conversations all the time when we see compilations announced or this announced, and it's good for us and it's healthy for us to have these conversations of, are these labels taking our demos? Are these labels, you know, being proactive of having, you know, it included if the music fits the bill? And if not, why are they not, you know, having a call to action? And on the other side of that is the touring, where I've seen, you know, top agencies announce tours and them get backlash. And then all of a sudden there's some women. And you know what? If it takes the backlash to get women on there, so be it, because it will become a standard to have a woman on there. Now, I know it's like fighting too early, but like, let's just not please have the only 3 women playing first on a stage. That would be absolutely wonderful. But I also know that like it is data. Like we are a product, you know, you have to look at X, Y, and Z. And I think just having the bodies there to begin with now is better than where we were in 2019 festival circuit.
I agree. I totally agree. And I mean, what you're doing by, you know, highlighting women, highlighting artists who are like so important to the scene and respectful of our community and move it forward. It is commendable, and I appreciate it a lot. And I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you.
So I'm just so happy that you brought me on here.
Oh, thank you so much. I was literally just about to wrap it up because I have a student in a few minutes, but yeah, no, it means a lot. And I'm really excited to have, I'm really pushing in the next year to have a lot more women artists on here, as well as women industry, because not only is it good for people to hear our conversations, I love these kinds of conversations. And I don't always get the pleasure of having them. Again, it's, you know, it's a job. You're not always going to talk to your, you know, someone you really want to. But right now, because this concept is just in such a developmental period, I really feel like I'm able to pick and choose who I get to have on. So it's like when I get to choose Lee, when I get to choose James Funkcase, and all of these people who are so respectable and like created the foundations, you know, they're pulling people who are going to be like the generation underneath us. And like, that's the most important part. And, you know, when my students listen to this, they're like, oh, wow, like these are 2 badass women and they're like doing it and they're like making money off of it. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. But thank you so much for coming on, Jordan. I greatly appreciate it. I'm excited for everybody to listen to this. And yeah, that's it.
Yay. Thanks so much, Liz. I appreciate you. And thanks to everybody for listening.
Yes, thank you guys. You're tuning to XO Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. And we have our next live festival series coming up soon.
Thank you guys, as always, for tuning into the XO Podcast. I really loved this episode, so I hope you guys liked it as much as I did. If you want ad-free episodes, make sure to head over to my Patreon. If you want a shout out on the podcast, make sure to head over to my Patreon. If you want edit packs, sample packs, vocal packs, one-on-one lessons, make sure to head over to my Patreon. My girl, Remedy Montreal, multi-genre bass producer, did a guest mix for XO Radio this week, so make sure to click the link below and jam out to that. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you fuckers next time.